According to the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, 66 cents out of every dollar that you spend at a locally owned business stays local, versus the 11 cents that stays local when you shop at a multinational retailer. Yes, both are important, but indie bookstores, local community indie bookstores, are more than just about supporting the economy. They are a vibrant part of the community. They're integral to the connection, the safe spaces, the places where you can go and engage in dynamic discussions that open minds and hearts and souls. And that's part of the topic for this episode of the Stark Reflections podcast is focusing on that critical nature of your local community bookstore.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Good afternoon, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 412 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. Today's episode is a solo episode. I'm going to share a few things that are important to me personally, and maybe potentially a little bit of a rant, but really it's all about our need to start working on the things that divide us and start working on the things that can bring us together. That's the main focus of this episode, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But first, let's hear a word from this episode's sponsor.
Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created D2D Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draft2digital.com.
That's right, this episode is sponsored by Draft2Digital, in particular, Draft2Digital Print. And just a reminder that it was last weekend, it was the weekend of April 19th, that I hosted a full day, 7 hours of, was it 7? 6 hours. I can't remember, from noon until 7 p.m. So yes, that would be 6 hours of live streaming chats all about print, from the introduction to print books for authors who are not familiar with, print books in general and how POD works for indie authors, all the way to how Draft2Digital Print works, conversations with folks from Vellum and Atticus for formatting your print books if you didn't want to use the free formatting that Draft2Digital had. I talked to book cover designers, a couple of cover designers, Avery and Susie, and talked about sort of, what makes a good cover, etc., and how to work with cover designers, etc. And then also a panel discussion with writers who are doing really well with print books and the things that they do to market their print books. Now, a lot of that was in-person marketing as opposed to the digital marketing that's very common for indie authors. And then, of course, a final Q&A session just to answer any of those questions. Print books are so important, and that's also an element that I'm going to get into in this episode, because Saturday, April 26th, is Canadian Independent Bookstore Day, and in the States, it's very similar, Independent Bookstore Day, and it's so important that we support local independent bookstores, which I'll get into in a little bit. And speaking of support, I just wanted to say a huge shout out and a huge thank you to those who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections, as well as my coffee buddies over at buymeacoffee.com/Mark Leslie. What I'm doing is I'm taking the funds that I've received from you guys, and thank you guys so much for your support, and I'm reinvesting that back into support for your local bookstore. and that'll be among the mailing free books to winners, etc. And I'll get into that later on, but I just want to say thank you guys so much for the support. I do everything I can to try to reinvest that support back into the community. But that's it for this sort of introductory blather. I'm going to blather. I'm gonna, and I'll leave that in. I normally edit out those verbal typos or when I trip over my lips and tongue. But I'm just going to play a bumper, and then I'll get into the main content of this episode. Okay, so the very first thing I want to talk about is supporting independent bookstores. They are so important. They are the lifeblood of the local community. And I know a lot of indie authors, it's all about online and it's all about ebooks and stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I'm spending so much time investing in print books and even working on a book in hand. I'm sure if you're a longtime listener, you know my frustration where I lost 8+ hours of work on that manuscript, and I haven't yet had the courage or strength to go back and pick that manuscript up and have another go at it. I hope that second go at adding those extra 30,000 words that I lost, I hope that's even better, right? Because it's kind of like the first one was practice, or like an early draft. So we'll see how that goes. But print books are so important, and indie bookstores are so important because, like a local library, your local bookstore is a hub. It's a safe space. It's a place where you go in and you open up a book, or you open up a conversation with a bookseller, with a book nerd who works there or owns it or manages the store, whatever it is, and you open up your heart, you open up your soul, you open up your mind. Books are so powerful. You know that as writers. You know how powerful books are, and that's why having a place that you can go as a reader, as a writer, that you can go and feel the connection. I was recently in Los Angeles, and when my good friend Julie Strauss, who is the co-author of the novels Lover's Moon and Hex in the City, and also her amazing novels, which I'm working with her to re-release in hardcover and trade paperback this year. 5 novels, more than 5 novels, but she's got the Chefs in Love series and some other great phenomenal. And she writes romance, contemporary romance, and the humor elements of her novels are the ones that resonate the most with me, because Julie is a riot. She's a lot of fun. So when I was in LA, I spent some time with Julie and her husband Joe and her kids Joey and Aaron, who are just wonderful human beings, absolutely amazing. These people are awesomeness personified. But when Julie came to pick me up from Hollywood to take me to Orange County, we stopped in downtown LA at the Last Bookstore. And oh my God, it was heaven. It was absolute heaven. We took so many pictures and videos of me walking through. There's some of the displays you've seen in book nerd memes of just book displays and stuff like that were there, and I just marveled at it, and I just wanted to spend the whole day there. They even had a huge record section. I was sending my good friend Steve pictures of that, saying, "Oh my God, you would love this. Is there something you want me to look for, to try and find?" But then we went to the Mission Viejo, I think I pronounced that properly, public library. That was Julie's, that's her library where, she homeschooled her kids for elementary school and went there regularly on trips with the kids. And just this gorgeous community library. And of course we found a copy of Lover's Moon there at the library, which is really cool. It's kind of fun when you can walk in and see that. And that, again, that's an independently published book, but they had the hardcover version there at the library. But those locales, we also went to, on the next day, we went to visit some breweries. And of course, one of the stops had to pop into the nearby bookstore. And then again the next day as well, when we went to an escape room, it was like, well, we got to stop in at the bookstore because bookstores are where it's at. But anyways, I digress, as I often do. The reason I'm talking about bookstores and I'm doing a talk on Saturday on the 26th for the Toronto Indie Author Conference, and I'm thrilled about that. But my talk is working with libraries and bookstores, and it's a workshop, unlike just a talk. So I'm going to be doing obviously a presentation and talk, but I'm going to have a worksheet. And it's going to be based on content that I talked about several episodes back on libraries, working with libraries, and it's going to be a worksheet that very much asks you to outline some of those things, elements from your book or elements from your own personal experiences and skills, and how you can leverage that into offers you can make to that local bookstore or library. But that day, the 26th, I would normally, as an author, have loved, and it's frustrating because it's always been that weekend that I seem to be traveling somewhere and not able to, connect with my local bookstore and do something, if not as an author there to support them, but to be there as a customer and go in and just make extra purchases on that day. Yeah, I just made some purchases last weekend at that aforementioned local bookstore, Wordsworth Books, which I absolutely love. They've been in the Waterloo community for more than 40 years. They're celebrating their 41st anniversary this year, but I won't be able to be there. And because I'm at this conference all day, I'm not going to be able to go visit some local indie bookstores in the Toronto area. So what I wanted to do to show my support is I sent this out in my author newsletter earlier today, and I'm recording this on Thursday, April 24th, is I am asking my readers to please go support their local bookstore. I mean, if not just that day, but any time between the 20th of April and May 3rd, so the week before and after, because again, that one day they may be occupied or busy or doing something, and then to show me. And I have a form they can show proof, like upload a receipt, a picture of your receipt or you with the book or whatever in front of the bookstore, or if not a purchase, because again, not everyone can afford to make a purchase, something that they did to support the local bookstore, like, talking about it, sharing on social media, posting a picture of themselves standing in front of the bookstore and talking about how awesome their bookstore is, whatever it was that they can do to help promote their local bookstore. And for that, I'm giving them access to, okay, I have ebooks and audiobooks available, pick the ones you want. And I'm doing that because I want, and again, I don't, if they purchase, it's like my books are most likely not going to be in their local bookstore. They could special order them, but it's not to buy something of mine. It's to buy any book. As a reader, go and buy a book from a local author. Whatever it is, just support that local. The value, the critical nature of supporting local. And I'm also doing a random draw, so everyone who enters will be a random draw, and then whoever the winners are, I'll say, hey, congratulations, here are some physical books that I have, which one would you like? And I will personalize it to you or a friend or whatever, and I will mail it to you or that friend you want me to mail it to. And that's my way of saying thank you so much for supporting something that is so important. Now, I'm not just sharing this because I think it's cool, and of course it was my idea, so I thought it was pretty cool, but I'm sharing this because this is sort of an out-of-a-box thinking way for you as an author to demonstrate your love and your passion and your support for local bookstores. Because let's say you don't have a local community bookstore. I didn't in the town I grew up in because, the local store was an hour's drive away. So what can you do? What are the things you can do to support the local bookstore and to demonstrate that? And let them know as well. I mean, in a social media post on Instagram yesterday, I talked about this. I talked about a graphic novel I just special ordered from that local bookstore, which I could have more easily gone to Amazon and just ordered and had it the next day. But I preferred to go and special order it from my local bookstore so I could support them. I did. I ended up actually 3 different books that I wanted to get, and I got a hold of through that bookstore. I'll be talking about one of them very shortly, and I have mentioned it before. But to me, it's important that I take the time to invest in that local bookstore the way that bookstore invests in the community, and also do it in a way that shows me as an author supporting the local bookstore. And that is one of the lessons in how to work with your local bookstore or library, is the things you can do to support them. So, in this episode, I'm going to be doing 2 separate clips. One of them is a keynote that I did for BookFest, which I talked about, and my patrons had access to about a week and a half before the keynote actually went live. I think it was. I can't remember. But it was before the keynote went live. I wanted my patrons to have access to it. But I thought, you know what? This is an important message. I want everyone who has access to the podcast to hear that message because it's so important. And I'll get to that in just a second. And then the other bit is I'm going to be reading something I just got from T. Thorne Coyle. And I believe it was through Thorne's newsletter. And they wrote a really powerful and important piece. And I'll get to the reason behind that shortly. But I'm going to play another bumper so I can take a bit of a breath. I mean, it's not necessary. I don't have to. I can always just cut things. But I think it's more fun when I can play a bumper, take a bit of a breath, and talk about why this solo episode and why this is so important to me. Here in Canada, we are about to head into a federal election. And unfortunately, a good focus of this federal election is with the bullshit that's happening in the United States from Tangerine Palpatine. And it is just absolutely despicable, the things that are happening, the rights that are being taken away from people, the authoritarian leadership that is ignoring elements of the Constitution, ignoring actual law that are meant to prevent the government from overreaching. And right here in Canada, we have someone who's playing from that playbook, Pierre Poilievre, who I think we should call, I mean, if I'm calling the other idiot Tangerine Palpatine, I think we can call Pierre Poilievre Poutine Palpatine, because he's playing from the very same playbook. He's not about building up Canada. He is about talking about how Canada is broken and horrible. Yeah, of course we have problems like every country. We have problems, we have issues that we need to solve, and we're not perfect. But playing to the fact that Canada is completely broken and it's all the fault of the Liberals is the very same playbook that Tangerine Palpatine played in the US. And even the anti-wokeness and the idiocy that one of the policies that he's been pushing has nothing to do with the economy or doing something useful for Canada, but getting rid of the paper straws and bringing back throwaway plastics, which was sort of a step forward for climate change, a very important issue for the entire world. You know, not just thinking about us and our convenience right now, but thinking about our kids and thinking about the future and thinking about the planet itself. Anyways, as we're in the midst of this, I'm seeing the same divisiveness. And it's been there for a long time, but the divisiveness based on people who align with political parties. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really align with any political party. I don't identify with any leader. I don't worship any one particular leader. I think the closest I came to worshiping a leader was Jack Layton, who was the head of the NDP, the New Democratic Party. And I do admire leaders. I actually love Elizabeth May of the Green Party. I think she is one of the strongest, most eloquently spoken leaders. And ironically, the Green Party has virtually no power. They're not even an official party right now, unfortunately. But even their economic plan is actually pretty solid when you think, okay, they're about the environment and stuff like that. But a lot of it, she has a lot of good economic policies. Now, I will consider who to vote for, not based on, this is the political party that my father voted for, and that's why I did that. I basically look at where they stand and what they believe in and what they want to push forward and make my votes dependent upon that. So I don't automatically hate someone who votes for the other team, right? Like I'm a fan of the Montreal Canadiens. It doesn't mean I hate Leaf fans. And I wish we didn't do that. I wish we didn't single out people and say, well, you support this party, so therefore you're a Nazi, or whatever it is, the negative stuff that we spend so much time doing. We spend so much time looking at the differences and not looking at the similarities. You know what the similarities are that I see? And yes, there are people who, for example, are wanting Pierre Poilievre to get into office. They're not evil people and Nazis. And for the most part, they're not anti-woke. They're concerned citizens who care and want what's best for the country. Now, they see that, okay, I may have to, as I think a lot of people did in the U.S., I may have to hold my nose because I don't like Palpatine, Tangerine Palpatine. I just don't want to use the guy's name. I don't want to support that narcissistic felon grifter, but I think that he's going to do something good for the economy. And I suspect that there's a lot of people holding their nose and thinking that, okay, it's time to get rid of the Liberals. They've done damage, because that's been Poilievre's message in the 20 years he's been as a professional politician who's had no other real role, constructive role in society other than tearing down what the other people are doing. That's sort of his plan. His plan isn't actually a plan. His plan is how can I mock the others. But those who support Poilievre are not evil people. They're not bad people. If they support him because what he wants to do to take away the rights of individuals and to circumvent some of the laws in Canada and to go against continuing with methodologies that help invoke inclusion and equity and diversity. I have an issue with that, and I'd love to talk to people one-on-one about that rather than lump them into and say, well, you're a fascist Nazi. I don't think we get anywhere with that. But we do get somewhere when we look at the things we have in common, when we look at the things that we get passionate about, and we actually have open and frank discussions rather than say, well, I can't talk to you because you're an idiot. That's not going to get us anywhere. That's how we got where we are. And that's why the keynote that I'm about to share, I think, is important, because it's a reminder to us as writers that that's the power we have. The power we have to share stories and tales that can help open people's minds and bring people together. That's what books do, is they actually connect people. And then Thorne's essay, I think, is so important because it's a reminder of the horrible things that come with divisiveness. And I admire Thorne so much. I have Thorne's new book, Resistance Matters. I think that's the title. I have to go look now. Yes. Sorry. Resistance Matters, Essays on Love and Action. This is a newly revised and expanded edition. And I know Thorne through the writing community. Thorne is an amazing person, a brilliant writer, and somebody who continually inspires me to be a better person and to do better. And so I'm going to read this essay from Thorne's recent blog post / newsletter, because I think it's something that's going to resonate with you. But that's it for my introductory reflections and why I'm doing this episode. First, I'm going to share the keynote, then play a bumper, and then I'll read Thorne's incredible essay. I'm going to talk about something that is not only dear to my heart, but also essential in our ever-evolving world. The power, the responsibility, the privilege, and the crucial role that we have as writers. Now, one might argue that there are far more important roles that can bring tremendous benefit to the world. There's no arguing of the importance of functions that folks in the roles of doctors, nurses, medical professionals, researchers, scientists, etc. can bring. We need those who grow, cultivate, harvest, produce, and deliver food. Those responsible for the provision of safe and fresh water. The designers, the builders of the places where we live, the roads we travel, and the various means of transportation that, in addition to moving people, can also move the services and supplies we need. We benefit from those whose role is to protect and serve, those who educate and nurture. But what about the dreamers, the artists, the musicians, the storytellers? What about those whose very words and art can move, shape, and inspire the world. Perhaps inspire those who perform those aforementioned critical roles. The world needs you, dear writer, and perhaps now more than ever. Some people need stories to bring them to other places, other realities, other possibilities, perhaps even fantasies that will allow them a reprieve from the blunt and frightening world they live in. Other people need books they can learn from or gain inspiration for their own endeavors or even their own art. Consider how many times you were inspired to write because of something magnificent that you read, listened to, or watched. If your passion is to write, and if you are struggling right now with trying to be creative in a time when emotions run high and the very foundations of democracy seem as if they're being tortured and tested, I implore you to listen to the whispers of that muse, to engage in a poetic dance with that spirit of creation, and to keep writing. Because the world needs you, and the world needs your writing. Storytelling itself was born out of the innate desire to connect with other humans, to share, inspire, and ultimately forge connections between people. It all started, if you trace it back, to paintings on cave walls and even those human cave dwellers themselves huddled around the protective light and heat of a fire at the end of another long day, sharing oral tales of the remarkable hunt that led to the food that they had just cooked and ingested. Or maybe they relayed the story of how they came to discover the crevice in the rock where everyone was currently seeking shelter. It started off with those rudimentary wall paintings and oral stories passed along person to person, generation to generation. It was a beautifully intimate and magical event because, regardless of whether it was for teaching a skill or entertaining, it was ultimately about connection. But soon, another type of magic began to emerge: the written word. Someone could transcribe the words of the village's storyteller, and that scroll could be handed to someone and brought to another village where it could be read to a new audience. And as technologies emerged, papyrus, scrolls, Gutenberg's printing press, the mass market paperback, pulp fiction magazines, online bookstores, and ebooks, stories could suddenly be shared beyond a single village or heritage line. The same story could be transcribed and shared with multiple other communities around the globe. And with that explosion of a new industry, publishing, there was constantly a need for more and more storytellers and writers and book producers, all the people whose business it was and is ultimately to bring people together. And as accessibility to books has continued to expand, so too do opportunities for writers and storytellers. Now, more writers than ever in the history of publishing have access to easily accessible tools and can build a career in writing without having to wait for the blessing from some anonymous gatekeeper in London or New York. We live in an unprecedented era where access to tools, options, opportunities, and choice has never been greater. As writers, we have an extraordinary amount of control and power to exercise our most precious resources, our creativity, and the intellectual property that springs from it. However, with access to such power comes immense responsibility. In a world that often seems determined to sow divisiveness and conflict, your storytelling and your writing skills have never been more critical or more needed. Books and stories are at their core about connections, and you, the creative scribe, play a fundamental role in helping to create and bridge those connections. Throughout history, stories have been the thread that ties us together. Stories have the power to entertain, to educate, to inspire, and to heal. Through stories, we explore the vast range of human experience and emotion. We find common ground, empathy, and understanding. As writers, you have the unique ability to shape perspectives and influence thought. Your words can challenge the status quo, break down barriers, and foster a greater sense of unity, community, and support. In today's digital age, the reach of your words, your stories, is virtually limitless. With the click of just a few buttons, your writing can be shared globally, touching the lives of people you will most likely never meet. This is both a remarkable opportunity and a profound responsibility. The stories you tell can resonate across cultures and generations, leaving an indelible mark on the world. So, how do we, as writers, navigate this incredible power and responsibility? Here are a few guiding principles to consider. Authenticity. Be true to yourself and your voice. Authentic stories resonate deeply with readers. And readers can sense when a narrative is genuine, and they connect more profoundly with stories that come from an honest place. So write from your heart and let your unique perspective shine through. No, there are no new stories, but there are the stories that are uniquely yours to share. Embrace yourself, your perspective, your experience, and share those stories with passion. Empathy. We know that those who read fiction consistently demonstrate a higher degree of empathy, and the world needs more empathy. Cultivate empathy in your own writing. Seek to understand and portray the experiences of those characters you craft and write about with compassion and sensitivity. This not only enriches your stories, but also fosters greater understanding and connection among your readers. What better way to connect with someone else for them to see a little bit of themselves or someone they know and love in a character? Courage. Don't be afraid to tackle difficult or controversial topics. Don't be shy about sharing your stories, your struggles, your triumphs, your tragedies. Your stories have the potential to inspire deep thought, to spark important conversations, and to drive meaningful change. Approach these topics with courage and integrity, knowing that your words can make a difference. Because your words also subtly tell another person that they are not alone in whatever it is they're facing. And responsibility. Always be mindful of the impact that your stories may have. Avoid perpetuating harmful stereotypes, which can often come from what some writing craft teachers call that low-hanging fruit. Carefully consider the uniqueness of your characters instead of the one-dimensional way they might be painted, but only considered as a member of this or that group, or religion, or culture. Consider the messages in your stories. Do they have the potential to further divide, or are they filled with the possibility of the power that comes from uniting? As you embark on your writing journeys, remember that you are not just wordsmiths. You are ultimately architects of human connection. Your stories have the power to bridge divides, to heal wounds, and inspire the building of a better world. Embrace this responsibility with passion and purpose. In conclusion, I urge you to recognize and embrace the incredible power that you hold. Use your creativity and your voice to make a positive impact on the world. You matter. Your stories matter. You and your stories have the potential to change lives for the better and to shape the future. So go forth, write boldly and with passion, and contribute to a world filled with more empathy, more understanding, and more unity. I look forward to reading the incredible and imaginative worlds that you write and the magnificent other things that your writing inspires in our world. Thank you. Okay, that was my keynote for BookFest, which took place earlier in April of 2025. It was virtual. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And this is from Teethorn Coyle's recent newsletter. And the title of this essay, which I think is so important, is Rehumanizing Each Other. Rehumanizing Each Other by T. Thorne Coyle. Hello, friends. My intention for this week's newsletter was to share what I'd written on community, prosperity, and magic a couple of weeks ago. Or the podcast I just did on love and determination during hard times. And I'm still going to below because those things are important too. But first, I need to speak honestly about my current state. It's not my usual uplifting musings, and I hope that's okay with you. Last night, my sleep was troubled. I kept waking up with thoughts of the men in CECOT prison and the planes in Texas waiting to take 200 more immigrants to that pit of brutality without even the thinnest veneer of due process. All prisons are brutal, but this one seems worse than should even be imaginable. This morning, the news tells me that the U.S. Supreme Court finally woke up and did something to stop the latest transport. I'm relieved. And I also know this fight is far from over. Yesterday, I sent out a call to file a complaint with the UN Human Rights Commission about the abuses at CECOT and the U.S. transports. And I still think that is a good idea. It is one small way to take action. We must approach our current situation from all angles, whether it's supporting immigrants' rights organizations, writing letters, marching in the streets, monkey-wrenching the companies of the people in charge of this debacle, creating safe spaces for LGBTQ plus kids, or supporting our neighbors. But the first thing we must do? We must rehumanize one another in order to combat this fascism based on hatred. Dehumanization is the key to their power. Now, in this essay, Thorne has an image of a poem by Martin Niemöller, and I probably pronounced that wrong, from 1946, and this is the poem First They Came, and it's taped to what looks like a telephone post, and it looks like it's got sheet on it, so it's been protected from the rain, but it's got rain droplets on it, which kind of makes it very, very poignant. And for those who don't know, the poem is First They Came. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. So this is the famous poem stapled to a utility pole. And Thorne's essay continues. Did you know that Martin Niemöller was an anti-Semite who supported the Nazis? They still took him to a concentration camp. His famous poem is not a parable or metaphor. It actually happened to him. He said nothing as group after group was rounded up until literally there was no one left to stand with him. Niemöller's regret and remorse were real. They also came too late. It is not too late for us. Whenever we hear dehumanizing language or witness dehumanizing actions, be they against trans people, disabled people, racialized people, immigrants, or people of different religions, we can speak up. We can ask questions. We can intervene. We can act. And we can, whenever possible, look upon each other with kindness and support our best natures. In supporting our best natures, we have a chance to welcome each other into pockets of safety and love. We have a chance to make it through. Thanks for being here. Thorne. That's the essay. If you're interested in more thoughts about ways to make it through, there is a link to Thorne's recent podcast on fostering determination through love called Magic, Creativity, and Life, and also Thorne's essay on community prosperity called Community Prosperity, Community Health. And I will have links to that in the show notes. I think a lot about what Thorne said, and I mentioned this earlier. And I know it's hard when I get angry and I get scared for those whose rights are being taken away. It's easy for me to dehumanize people who support those people who are performing horrible, terrible actions on others. And I have to remind myself, while I'm angry at what they are doing, it's still so important for me not to dehumanize people and say, well, you support so-and-so, therefore you are. Insert negative bad word here. That's not going to get us anywhere. That's probably one of many reasons how we got to where we are today. So I'm going to be taking the time to do what I can to not dehumanize other people, whether they're part of these marginalized groups or whether they are people whose support of political leaders who take these divisive and horrible actions. I need to look for the humanity in all people and look for the goodness, just like Thorne inspires us to do. And that's it for this episode of the podcast. I want to thank you for listening so much. If you want to support this podcast, please leave a review wherever you found this podcast, or you can share this episode or any episode that resonates with you with someone else that you think would find value in it. Thanks again for listening. Thank you for supporting your local independent bookstore. Thank you for any efforts you make to not dehumanize others. And until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.